1944. Lance Corporal Jack Silva. Lancashire Fusiliers. 1345. In Burma, summer arrived earlier than anyone thought. The skies were dark, and the air felt sticky, almost like glue. Jack gripped his Lee Enfield bolt-action rifle and checked it carefully. He pulled a small cotton flannel patch from his pocket and wiped the barrel clean of loose mud. To Jack, this weapon was his shield, and it would be the tool to defeat the enemy. He moved forward with his regiment, staying in their two-line formation. They held their weapons loosely, careful not to put their fingers on the triggers. The lieutenant said to Jack, "Hurry up, will you? You're behind because you've mixed the dog. You'd better keep up or go back to that little place of yours." "Yes, sir," Jack answered loudly. Sweat ran down his face from the humidity, and the strange animal cries in the jungle made him shiver with fear. He knew a snake could strike at any moment if he wasn't careful, and that worry stayed with him as he looked down. He heard the python before he saw it, sliding across the jungle floor. Jack raised his rifle and aimed as he moved forward. He knew the snake, with its earthy colors, was less of a threat than firing his weapon, which would give away his unit's position. The sound of gunfire would travel through the thick jungle and reach the old, vine-covered castle, warning the enemy hiding there. "The mixed dog comes from Bermuda, and I bet he'll be the first to die. He's just another number from the colonies. Let him go in the first wave, Phil." "The second wave always wins," said a soldier named Roger, as the Fusiliers moved over the loose earth, with the heavy monsoon clouds hanging above. Jack glared at the men, feeling hatred for their ignorance. At 14:25, lightning flashed and thunder boomed across the stormy sky, blocking out the last rays of sunlight that slipped through the canopy. Soon after, heavy rain began to fall, and the ground slowly turned to mud. Jack looked up and felt the rain soaking his hair, making his uniform heavy, almost like wet wool. The others felt the same as they moved forward on tiptoe, their hearts pounding. Fear filled them all, knowing death could be waiting. By heaven, the python slithered away. Jack thought deeply. Thankfully, the python slithered away. Jack paused, lost in thought, as he was walking past the tropical rainforest tree, after which they all dropped to the ground under the foliage and crawled forward for cover. The machine gunners found good cover behind a boulder, with a gap in the middle that let them see and fire their gun. The fighting broke out when lightning struck, making the Allied soldiers jump up and run for cover. It truly began when a Japanese soldier was shot in the leg. This was guerrilla warfare at its peak, but how long could the monarchy keep going before the enemy stopped them? Lying in the undergrowth, Jack held his rifle steady and shivered, tears filling his eyes. Look at him. He can't even tell a bone from a firefight. The lieutenant fired back as he retreated, while a sergeant shouted for covering fire. Jack knew what was coming. Harsh discipline and more xenophobic remarks meant to break him down during the fight. "What are you doing, Jack? Stand up and charge the enemy with all your strength. Get up, you mixed pit bull, and fight." Another soldier laughed, pressed himself against a tree, and fired as lightning flashed. The jungle was now dark. Earlier, the small flashes of light had been swallowed by thick, earth-colored clouds. The battle continued. Jack got up and rushed to take the spot another soldier was holding. The soldier gave Jack a condescending look, but let him pass to take cover beside him. "Edison at your service, Jack. See that tree? Hear that? That's reality hitting you. You're not in paradise anymore. This place is ruled by politics and power. Now, look at that man over there. Shoot him and prove yourself to the British Crown." Jack looked where Edison pointed and saw a veteran guiding the recruits with experience. The enemy was not a friend. Differences in society had led people to kill each other out of misunderstanding. As corrupt men rose to power, ordinary people followed, forced by the need to survive. He made a quick decision, even as his mind struggled with guilt. POW. He fired and hit the enemy in the neck. The man collapsed, blood soaking into the plants and feeding the thick undergrowth. The lieutenant, who dashed for cover, after giving Jack a verbal beating, was surprised by how clean the shot was and by Jack's disregard for ethical laws of humanity. Still, for the lance corporal, it was a different story. His eyes flashed before him as if God himself had left. He saw what he had done with the deadly weapon that inflicted peace and war inside of him. He had little time to focus on the dead enemy soldier, as a bullet zipped by his ear and slammed into the trunk of a tree where an ally was taking cover. The gunfight continued, with shouts and commands in both English and Japanese echoing through the air. Jack watched in horror as a grenade exploded next to two of his allies who were trying to hide behind a tree. The blast threw them like startled birds, leaving their bodies torn by shrapnel and broken bones. He fired at a Japanese soldier running for cover, hitting him in the torso. The bullet tore through flesh and bone, and the man fell to the ground with a quiet thud. For Jack, shooting at targets or bayoneting sandbags was nothing like this real war, where chaos and death surrounded him. In Burma, there was no clear front line, just guerrilla warfare, hidden enemies, and deadly snakes that could strike at any moment. Suddenly, he heard the rolling of a grenade tossed from the enemy come near with a loud ping beside his feet. "Grenade!" Edison shouted, trying to kick it away. The blast still caught both of them, knocking them down like a punch to the gut. Jack felt his weapon fly from his hand and land in the muddy ground. Disoriented, everything around him blurred as his vision spun. A loud ringing filled his ears while he watched the machine gun crew fire, cutting down soldiers and leaving the jungle floor covered with the wounded and dead. Their cries of pain filled the air, and then he heard the menacing shout, "Banzai," rising from hundreds of voices. "Jack!" Edison shouted, grabbing Jack's weapon and handing it back to him. Blood ran from Edison's ears, and his right ring finger was gone, leaving bloody marks on the rifle, the steel, and the mud. He collected his weapon as the ringing stopped, and like a demon from the seventh circle, he positioned himself. He picked up his weapon as the ringing faded. He got back behind cover and fired, the rain washing over the fallen. POW. 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 He kept shooting, dropping enemies as they charged with bayonets cold as winter, sending them to their heavenly reincarnation. Kill them all. Slay the invaders and bury their emperor, the lieutenant shouted, switching to his sidearm and firing at close range at a charging enemy. His bullet hit the man's head, splattering blood on the undergrowth and his uniform. He fired again into another enemy's chest, but the man kept coming, stabbing the lieutenant in the stomach and making him double over. "Lieutenant!" Jack shouted in anger, aiming at the man who attacked the officer. He pulled the trigger, but heard only a click, then a loud bang next to his head. Edison had fired, breathing hard from adrenaline, but it was too late. Pieces of flesh from the lieutenant's killer lay on the ground beside him. Jack tried to run over in the chaos as the charging Japanese were shot down, but Edison grabbed him by the back of his uniform and held him tight. Edison's large, muscular frame easily overpowered Jack. "Listen, mate. Leave him. He tried to be a hero and got himself killed. This is reality. There's no law and order here, only rank and obedience." Edison shook Jack, who stared at him in fear as thunder roared and the machine gun finally fell silent. The rain cooled the hot barrel of the Vickers gun. The immediate roar of the Banzai charge faded, replaced by heavy rain and the groans of the wounded. The Fusiliers had stopped the Japanese advance, but the price was clear in the mud around them. Jack stared at the lieutenant's lifeless body. The same man who had insulted him was now just another casualty, as he stared out into the mist of the rainforest. The illusion of imperial glory had washed away with the mud, leaving only the raw instinct to stay alive. Jack held his stained Lee Enfield rifle, his hand steady despite the horror around him. His comrades' prejudice couldn't protect them from the truth of war, and surviving proved his worth more than any system ever could. "Cease fire! Cease fire! The enemy has been slain," the second-in-command yelled, who was a British sergeant attached to the regiment. "Tend to the wounded." Jack stood over the body lying in the mud, blood still leaking out. He knelt for a moment, then looked for Edison, who was searching a dead Japanese soldier for valuables. The old Jack would have wanted to punch Edison, but now he felt only despair. Survival seemed to bring out the worst in everyone. The rain poured down harder, drowning out the gunshots and the cries of the wounded. Jack stood up, dizzy after a moment of silence, and looked at the battlefield full of small craters from grenades. He put his hand on a tree marked by bullet holes and prayed, "God be alongside me through this hell, for you have gone through worse. Stay with me and be my shield and sword through this hell we call war." Jack finished his prayer and wiped the rain from his forehead. His uniform felt heavy, pinning him to the ground he never wanted to see. As the adrenaline faded, exhaustion set in. The regiment had survived the first wave, but the ruined, vine-covered castle still waited ahead in the darkness. Edison didn't look up from his grim task. His bloody, four-fingered hand rifled through the dead soldier. Edison kept searching the dead soldier, his bloody, four-fingered hand pulling out a small Japanese silk flag and a pocket watch. Here, survival had its own rules, and for Jack, morality felt like a distant memory. Only increased while sitting upon a log. The moonlight shone through the canopy while he kept watch over Edison and two other sleeping soldiers. His level of alertness drifted into a daze because his eyes seemed weighed down by lethargy. His stomach would growl with hunger. Only cold baked beans were on the menu, with stale bread that was more like a chunk of brick. If anything, it would serve better as a throwable weapon than a meal. 3 hours passed. Edison awoke with a tired yawn and immediately locked eyes with Jack, who was drifting in and out of sleep, then said, "Jack, wake up. It's my turn to keep watch now. And leave us to get killed." "I don't think so. The Japanese could be anywhere, watching and waiting," Jack said, eyes still closed. Slowly, he opened them and listened to the jungle sounds and the soft rain. "The Japanese can kiss my ass. They won't dare to leave that castle after taking massive casualties like that," Edison replied. However true that he might be, Jack understood the enemy to be an unchivalrous foe, and would be back for vengeance to avenge their fallen and carry the Emperor's will. A quiet wind moved through the leaves, and a soft rustling made Jack turn and look for any sign of the enemy. "My mind must be playing tricks on me," he thought, but he kept his guard up and his hand on his rifle. "Yes, but the enemy can hide in the darkest corners, ready with a blade," Jack said quietly, as the humid breeze blew through the camp. Raindrops fell on Edison's face as he pulled out a cigarette and a matchbook. He struck a match, the flame flickering in the dim light, reflected in Jack's dark eyes. "Are you crazy? Are you trying to get us all killed?" Jack whispered harshly, grabbing Edison by the front of his uniform before he could light the cigarette. "Oh, fuck off, you bloody mixed dog. Go back to Bermuda where you belong, you stupid nigger." As Edison pushed him off aggressively, Jack went into a state of fury and balled his fist. Jack felt he should walk away, but surrounded by war and death, he punched Edison in the nose, knocking him to the muddy ground. Jack climbed on top and started hitting him, waking the nearby soldiers with Edison's screams for help. Blood splattered on the earth as a large centipede crawled through the undergrowth. "Fuck you. If this is what humanity wants, then so be it. I'll kill you right here and now," Jack shouted, tears running down his face as he pounded Edison's chest in a rage. Just as the other soldiers rushed to stop him, a loud whistle cut through the jungle air. "Incoming artillery," the sergeant yelled with all his might. Jack looked up, feeling any hope of friendship disappear, as a shell hit a tree and snapped it in two. The tree fell quickly toward Jack and Edison. Jack punched Edison one more time, leaving him dazed, then moved out of the way. There was a scream and a sickening crunch as blood and organs splattered everywhere, covering Jack's uniform. With Edison's blood on his uniform and his rifle held tight, Jack rushed forward, hearing Japanese voices. "Kill the enemy. Kill them all." The thought echoed in his mind as he led the frightened soldiers through the bombardment. "Charge! Kill every last one of them." A private yelled in fear, then released a deadly war cry. "For king and country." The sergeant yelled as his heart beat through his chest quicker than a small mantis. As they charged, the old castle appeared ahead, and a Japanese machine gun began cutting down Jack's allies before they could take cover. The enemy fired from the open windows of the ancient castle, the machine gun spraying bullets everywhere. In this kind of warfare, there was no hope, only death and orders. Jack jumped behind a massive tree trunk, slamming his back against the bark. "Suppressing fire. Focus on the window men," Jack ordered, then the smell of cordite saturated the air along with gun smoke. The remaining soldiers of the Fusilier regiment took position behind the large trees and leaned their frames, firing at the Japanese soldiers in well-fortified positions. Life was unfair, just like the grenade that flew from the lower window of the three-story castle. Shrapnel flew everywhere, tearing flesh from a Fusilier's cheek and exposing his jawbone, but he still got up and fired back at the enemy. The smoke grew thicker, stinging Jack's eyes as he loaded a fresh clip into his rifle. One of the machine guns turned toward him and opened fire. Jack pressed himself against the tree for cover as bullets tore into the bark, chipping away the wood. Jack felt trapped, like a tank stuck in mud with nowhere to go. Suddenly, the gunfire stopped as a bullet hit its mark, silencing one of the machine gun nests. A limp arm hung over the empty window frame. Time was running out. In seconds, another enemy would take over the machine gun. Quickly, Jack threw his only grenade into the window and ducked for cover. The explosion shattered the cobblestone nest, and the old stones collapsed, burying the deadly weapon that had killed so many of his allies. The wider roar of the battlefield instantly consumed the crunch of the collapsing cobblestone. Orders in the foreign tongue rang out as they moved into position, firing from the small openings behind the defensive positions with rifles. From further behind the front line, an artillery crew waited for the signal, then it came. A bright red flare that ignited the night sky like an inferno amongst the havoc of war. "Get ready, men. Prepare the artillery. Our brethren are attacking the castle." The detachment commander would yell as the crew started to load the artillery gun sectioned away from frontline combat. The artillerymen moved with discipline, as if they were drilled hundreds of times by a drill sergeant for such an occasion, but nothing could ever prepare you for dark deception. The large artillery gun went off with a loud bang after adjusting the distance and height of the shell that sounded through the air. It flew through the midnight sky as thunderclouds rolled closer and lightning struck in the background, reflecting heavenly light upon the brass of the explosive shell. Boom! The castle took a front-on hit, collapsing part of the structure upon the defending soldiers, burying their screams beneath tons of shattered historical stone and choking dust. Another shell screamed forward, hitting the center of the castle's small courtyard where the enemy held ammunition and explosives. Jack and the Fusiliers watched in victory, taking cover from flying debris as blood and rain soaked Jack's hair. This enemy stronghold would no longer stop their advance into the deeper jungles of Burma, where even tougher enemies waited. As Jack raised his rifle to celebrate, a strong blow hit him from behind, followed by a pistol shot and then more shots. He fell to his knees and felt his stomach, now covered in blood. That didn't sound like an enemy gun, it sounded British, he thought, just before another bullet hit the back of his head, tearing through his helmet. "That's for Edison," the sergeant said quietly, gripping his pistol as smoke drifted from the barrel.